Superman Tower of Power Incident. On June 21, 2007, 13-year-old Caitlin Locator arrived at Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom with her family for what should have been a perfect summer day. The Louisville Amusement Park was bustling with visitors eager to escape the heat on the various rides and attractions. Caitlin, an active middle school student from nearby Elizabethtown, had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. She was particularly excited about the Superman Tower of Power, the park's signature thrill ride that dominated the skyline at 177 feet tall. The Superman Tower of Power was considered one of the most popular attractions at Kentucky Kingdom. The ride worked by seating passengers in a circular gondola with their feet dangling freely beneath them. A sophisticated cable and pulley system would lift riders to the top of the tower, pause for a moment to build suspense, then release them into a controlled free fall back toward the ground. The sensation of weightlessness, combined with the panoramic view of Louisville, made it a must-ride attraction for thrill seekers. Safety harnesses secured riders around their torso and shoulders, while their legs hung unrestrained below the seats. Caitlin joined the line with her family members, watching as previous groups of riders screamed with delight during their descent. The ride operators went through their routine safety checks, ensuring all harnesses were properly secured before initiating the lifting sequence. Everything appeared normal as Caitlin's group was loaded into the gondola seats. The massive tower stretched high above them, and she could feel the anticipation building as the ride began its slow ascent. At approximately 40 feet above the ground, something went catastrophically wrong. One of the main support cables suddenly snapped under tension, creating a whip-like effect as the severed cable lashed across the ride's gondola. The steel cable, moving at tremendous speed and force, struck multiple riders before they could react. In an instant, what had been a moment of anticipation turned into absolute horror. Caitlin bore the worst of the cable's impact. The severed steel wire struck her legs with such force that both feet were completely amputated above the ankles. The other riders in the gondola screamed in terror as they witnessed the unthinkable accident unfold. Blood immediately began flowing from Caitlin's severe injuries while she remained conscious and aware of what had happened to her. The ride operators, seeing the emergency situation, immediately halted the lifting mechanism and began emergency descent procedures. Park security and medical personnel rushed to the scene as soon as the gondola returned to ground level. Caitlin remained remarkably calm despite her traumatic injuries, even asking about her severed feet. Emergency medical technicians quickly applied tourniquets and began life-saving treatment while preparing her for immediate transport to University Hospital. The other passengers, though physically unharmed, were deeply traumatized by witnessing such a horrific accident. The Superman Tower of Power was immediately shut down, pending a full investigation. Caitlin survived her injuries, but faced a lifetime of challenges adapting to her permanent disability. The accident led to industry-wide reviews of cable inspection procedures and ride safety protocols. Six Flags ultimately settled with the family for an undisclosed amount, while the ride was permanently removed from the park. The incident became a watershed moment for amusement park safety standards across the entire industry. Big Dipper roller coaster derailment incident. On May 30, 1972, families across London flocked to Battery Fun Fair to celebrate the holiday weekend. The popular amusement park, located along the Thames, had been a beloved destination for generations of Londoners seeking thrills and entertainment. Among the fair's most popular attractions was the Big Dipper, a classic wooden roller coaster that had been delighting visitors since 1951. The aging ride, with the traditional white-painted wooden structure and steep drops, represented the golden age of British seaside entertainment. The Big Dipper stood as a testament to post-war optimism. Built when the country was recovering and families were eager for simple pleasures, the coaster featured a series of hills and curves typical of wooden coasters from that era. Reaching speeds of approximately 35 miles per hour, its cars could hold up to 20 passengers at a time. And on busy days like this holiday weekend, the ride operated continuously with minimal downtime between cycles. The wooden track, supported by an intricate framework of timber beams and cross braces, had weathered more than 2 decades of London's harsh climate. Among the holiday crowd were several families with children, including groups of teenagers who had come to the fair specifically for the thrill rides. The Big Dipper's line stretched long on this busy afternoon, with excited riders waiting their turn to experience the classic coaster. Many of these visitors had ridden the Big Dipper countless times over the years, trusting in its familiar rhythms and well-worn safety record. The ride operators, following their standard procedures, loaded passengers into the train cars and secured the simple lap bars that served as the primary restraint system. As the fully loaded train climbed the first major hill, building potential energy for the exciting descent ahead, passengers could see across the Thames and the London skyline beyond. The mechanical chain lift carried them steadily upward with its characteristic clicking sound. Everything seemed perfectly normal as the train crested the first hill and began picking up speed on the downward slope. The familiar sensations of acceleration and mild airtime brought squeals of delight from the passengers. Then, as the train approached a banked curve at high speed, catastrophic structural failure occurred. A critical section of the wooden track structure collapsed without warning, unable to support the dynamic forces of the speeding train. The lead cars immediately derailed, leaving the track entirely and plummeting toward the ground below. Passengers were thrown from their seats as the cars tumbled and crashed into the support structure beneath the track. The wooden framework, never designed to catch falling train cars, splintered and collapsed under the impact. 5 people died instantly from the devastating crash, while 13 others sustained serious injuries, ranging from broken bones to severe trauma. The screams of the injured and terrified witnesses filled the air as park staff and visitors rushed to help. Emergency services arrived quickly, but the tangled wreckage of wooden beams, twisted metal, and overturned train cars made rescue efforts extremely difficult. Some victims remained trapped beneath the debris for hours while rescue workers carefully dismantled the collapsed structure. The investigation that followed revealed that structural fatigue and inadequate maintenance had compromised the ride's safety. The wooden support beams had deteriorated over the years, weakened by weather exposure and the constant stress of train operations. Following this tragedy, the Big Dipper was permanently removed and Battery Funfair never reopened. The incident led to comprehensive safety reforms throughout the British amusement industry, establishing new standards for ride inspection and maintenance that continue to protect visitors today. Veruct, waterslide death incident. On August 7, 2016, 10-year-old Caleb Schwab arrived at Schlitterbottom Water Park in Kansas City with his family for what should have been a fun-filled summer day. Caleb was the son of Scott Schwab, a Kansas state legislator, and like many children his age, he was drawn to the park's most famous attraction. Towering above the water park at 168 feet and 7 inches tall stood Veruct, officially recognized as the world's tallest water slide. The German word Veruct means insane, a name that proved to be tragically prophetic. Veruct had opened just 2 years earlier amid great fanfare and media attention. The massive slide featured a unique multi-person raft system where 3 riders would be secured together in a specially designed inflatable raft. The ride began with a steep 17-story drop, followed by a second hill that created a moment of weightlessness before the final descent into a splash pool. The slide's designers had incorporated overhead safety netting along portions of the ride to prevent rafts from becoming airborne, a safety feature that acknowledged the extreme forces generated by the attraction. The ride's operation depended on precise weight distribution among the 3 passengers. Safety guidelines specified that the combined weight of all riders should fall within a specific range to ensure the raft maintained proper contact with the slide surface throughout the journey. However, these weight requirements were often loosely enforced during busy periods, and park staff frequently allowed combinations of riders that fell outside the recommended parameters. On this particular day, the park was crowded with families enjoying the summer heat relief that the water attractions provided. Caleb was excited to experience the world record slide, despite being smaller than the typical rider. He was paired with 2 adult women in the 3-person raft, creating a weight distribution that was significantly below the recommended minimum. The raft was secured at the top of the 168-foot tower, with all 3 riders strapped in using Velcro and nylon restraints. Park attendants gave their standard safety briefing before releasing the raft down the steep initial drop. The raft accelerated rapidly down the first massive drop, reaching speeds approaching 70 miles per hour as it hit the bottom and began climbing the second hill. Due to the improper weight distribution, the raft carried too much momentum as it crested the second hill. Instead of following the slide surface as designed, the raft became completely airborne for several feet. The lightweight raft, with insufficient weight to keep it grounded, flew upward toward the overhead safety netting that was meant to protect riders from exactly this scenario. Caleb, seated in the front of the raft, struck the metal supports of the overhead netting with devastating force.
The impact caused fatal head and neck injuries, while the two adult passengers suffered serious but non-fatal injuries as the raft crashed back down onto the slide surface. Park staff immediately initiated emergency procedures, but Caleb's injuries were beyond any medical intervention. The other riders were rushed to nearby hospitals for treatment of their injuries. Veruct was immediately and permanently closed following the accident. The subsequent investigation revealed a pattern of safety violations and design flaws that had been ignored since the ride's construction. Criminal charges were filed against several park executives and the ride's designer for reckless behavior and second-degree murder. Evidence emerged showing engineers had repeatedly warned about safety issues during construction, but these concerns were dismissed in favor of meeting opening deadlines. The slide was completely demolished in 2018, and the incident led to comprehensive reforms in waterslide safety nationwide.
Haunted Castle Fire Incident. On May 11, 1984, Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey was experiencing one of its busiest spring evenings of the season. The warm weather had drawn large crowds to the popular theme park, with families and groups of teenagers eager to experience the various rides and attractions. Among the park's most popular draws was the Haunted Castle, a walk-through dark ride that promised visitors a terrifying journey through a maze-like structure filled with ghosts, monsters, and other frightening surprises. The attraction had become a must-visit destination for thrill-seekers looking for a different kind of adrenaline rush. The Haunted Castle was housed in a large castle-themed building that had been constructed as a temporary structure but had remained in operation for several years. Inside, visitors would navigate through a series of narrow corridors, dark rooms, and tight passages, while costumed actors and mechanical effects provided scares along the way. The building's interior was decorated with foam padding, fabric hangings, and various props designed to create an authentically spooky atmosphere. These decorative materials, while effective for creating the desired ambiance, were highly flammable and had never been treated with fire-resistant chemicals. 8 teenagers, including a group of friends from nearby towns, had decided to experience the Haunted Castle together that evening. They were typical of the attraction's target demographic, young people seeking thrills and the social bonding that comes from shared scary experiences. The group purchased their tickets and joined the line outside the castle's entrance, joking nervously about what they might encounter inside. None of them could have imagined that this routine visit to a popular theme park attraction would end in tragedy. The building's design created several inherent safety hazards that would prove fatal. The maze-like layout included numerous dead ends and confusing pathways intended to disorient visitors as part of the entertainment experience. However, this same design made emergency evacuation extremely difficult, as there were very limited exit routes and no clear sight lines of safety. The building lacked a sprinkler system, smoke detection equipment, and adequate emergency lighting that would have been required in permanent structures housing public attractions. Shortly after 6:30 p.m., a small fire began in one of the foam-padded walls deep within the attraction. The exact cause was never definitively determined, but investigators suspected that either an electrical malfunction or discarded cigarette had ignited the highly combustible foam materials. Within minutes, the flames spread rapidly through the interconnected rooms and corridors, fed by the abundant flammable decorations and furniture throughout the structure. The building quickly filled with thick, toxic smoke that made visibility nearly impossible. Visitors inside the attraction initially thought the smoke and heat were part of the show, as special effects were commonly used to enhance the scary atmosphere. By the time people realized they were in genuine danger, the fire had spread extensively, blocking many of the limited exit routes. The maze-like interior, designed to confuse visitors under normal circumstances, became a death trap as panicked people tried desperately to find their way out through the smoke-filled corridors. The 8 teenagers became separated and lost in the burning maze. Despite the efforts of emergency responders who arrived quickly at the scene, all 8 young people died from smoke inhalation before they could be rescued. The victims ranged in age from 15 to 18 years old, their lives cut short by a preventable tragedy that exposed serious gaps in amusement park safety regulations.
The investigation that followed revealed numerous safety violations and regulatory failures. The structure had been approved as a temporary building, but had operated for years without meeting permanent building codes. Criminal charges were filed against several park officials, and the incident led to comprehensive reforms in fire safety requirements for all amusement park attractions nationwide. The tragedy at the haunted castle became a turning point that fundamentally changed how the industry approaches safety in entertainment venues. Worlds of Fun Decapitation Incident on June 7, 1981. Worlds of Fun Amusement Park in Kansas City was operating under typical summer conditions with moderate crowds enjoying the various attractions throughout the facility. The park's signature roller coaster, the Orient Express, had been thrilling visitors since its opening, featuring a unique design that included multiple inversions and high-speed elements that made it one of the most popular rides in the Midwest. The coaster's distinctive red and yellow trains regularly carried passengers through a series of loops, corkscrews, and banking turns that provided an intense but generally safe riding experience for thousands of visitors each operating season. William Halfcoat was a 20-year-old seasonal maintenance worker who had been employed at the park for several weeks. Like many young people working summer jobs at amusement parks, he was eager to prove himself reliable and thorough in his duties. William had been assigned to perform routine maintenance inspections on various rides throughout the park, a responsibility that required him to examine track conditions, mechanical components, and safety systems to ensure everything was functioning properly. These inspections were typically scheduled during off-peak hours or when rides were temporarily shut down for maintenance purposes. On this particular afternoon, William was conducting what should have been a routine inspection of the Orient Express roller coaster. The standard protocol required that all ride operations cease completely before any maintenance personnel entered the restricted areas around the track. Multiple safety procedures were in place to prevent exactly the type of accident that was about to occur, including communication systems between ride operators and maintenance staff, physical lockout procedures for ride controls, and clearly marked boundaries that separated operational areas from maintenance zones. The Orient Express continued to operate normally, with trains full of passengers completing their circuits through the various inversions and high-speed sections of the track. The ride operators in the control booth maintained their standard monitoring procedures, watching for any irregularities in the ride's operation while managing the loading and dispatching of successive trains. The mechanical systems functioned exactly as designed, with block zones and safety sensors ensuring that trains maintained proper spacing and operated within safe parameters. Something went catastrophically wrong with the communication and safety protocols that should have prevented any maintenance worker from entering a restricted area. While the ride remained operational, Williams somehow gained access to an area immediately adjacent to the active roller coaster track, placing himself directly in the path of the speeding trains. Whether this was due to a breakdown in communication between departments, inadequate training on safety procedures, or a momentary lapse in judgment, the result was the same. As one of the Orient Express trains rounded a curve at full operational speed, it struck William with tremendous force. The impact was instantly fatal, causing severe trauma that resulted in his decapitation. The passengers on the train experienced the horrific shock of witnessing this tragic accident, while the ride operators immediately initiated emergency shutdown procedures upon realizing what had occurred. The train was brought to a stop as quickly as the safety systems allowed, and emergency services were summoned to the scene. The immediate aftermath of the accident sent shockwaves throughout the amusement park industry. Worlds of Fun permanently closed the Orient Express and conducted a comprehensive review of all safety procedures and training protocols. The investigation revealed critical failures in the communication systems and safety procedures that should have prevented any maintenance worker from accessing restricted areas during ride operation. Criminal charges were considered, though the focus ultimately shifted to implementing systematic changes that would prevent similar tragedies. The incident led to industry-wide reforms in maintenance safety protocols, including mandatory lockout-tagout procedures, improved communication systems between departments, and enhanced training requirements for all personnel working in proximity to operating rides. William Halfcoat's death became a catalyst for fundamental changes in how amusement parks approach worker safety, establishing standards that continue to protect maintenance personnel today.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones, and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.